We have
Yeah.
5, so we can get started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So the first one is just to review and approve the minutes from February 14th. I went through the meeting minutes. There was only one small thing that I saw, and it was just a very small like typo underneath the granite stairs and annex stone pillars repair. It says it requires a historic restoration expertise. And it could say like requires historic restoration expertise or requires a historic restoration expert, like either would work there. That was the only tiny thing. Everything else looks great. And I feel like you did a nice job of naming all of the arguments that were made for each of the projects. I really appreciated that. And that could not have been easy. So thank you, Mary, for that. Did anyone else have any questions or want to see any shifts in the minutes before we approve them?
Nope.
No. Okay. All right. Well, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes with that small change.
Okay. Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay.
Nope.
Roll call vote. Helene Busby.
Yes.
Oh, hello, Nathan Chung.
Hi, sorry for being late. What are you voting on?
We're just approving the minutes from the last minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I took a quick look at it. Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you. Jay Ferrario.
Jay Ferrer, yes.
Chris Gothier.
Yes.
Meg McGrath Smith, yes, and Mary Moriarty.
And you forgot Helene, I think. No. Okay, sorry. Yes.
Did I? I hope I didn't. If I did, I'm so sorry.
No, you. I'm always first because of my last name. So.
In council, we take before you start, you have to pull a name out of a hat, and that's who is first that time. So you never know who's going to be first until you pull the name out of the hat before the meeting. Okay, so let's get started with number 2. Just an update so far in the city council response to the FY24 CPAC recommendations. So I presented at finance, I think it was 2 weeks ago, but it is certainly, I don't know if anyone has had a chance to watch it, but it is available to the public, and it's a video that's available so that you can see exactly what the conversation was in finance. It was a lengthy conversation, and I think what came out of that was that the main concern amongst some folks on council was around housing and wanting to spend less on housing and not wanting to support the Appleton project and wanting to get to support the Library Commons 2 project, but not wanting to support the Wayfinders project. So we'll have to see what, not Wayfinders, the Library Commons 2, but not the wind development project, the Faro-Paca one. So I don't know if anyone got a chance to watch it. But
I saw that part of the argument, but I didn't see to the end. What was the outcome?
The outcome was that they gave a positive recommendation to all of our recommendations except for the wind development one, and then moved all of it to council for a conversation. So it's likely that it will be on the agenda for the April 16th meeting.
You mean they accept the Wayfinders one?
No, it was wind they didn't like. They didn't like the Far Alpaca building.
Okay.
Restoration.
Yeah.
You know, it's referred
so they
to
liked Library Commons. I just thought
Yes.
Megan said the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I said Wayfinders and I meant wind development. Sorry, too many W.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to keep it clear. Clear in my head. Thank you.
So, yeah, I was asked questions like, is there a way that we could spend less on housing? Do we have to spend this much on housing? Is it possible to approve one and not the other? So, there was some sense there that there are some folks on council who'd like to spend less on housing. It'll be interesting to see on the 16th what happens, because it'll be, a wider conversation amongst 13 people and not just the 5 that are on finance. And then we'll go from there. So, the full council for sure could choose to accept the recommendation of finance or to not accept the recommendation of finance. So we'll have to see what comes of that. So, yeah, any questions about it? Yeah, Helene.
So I should see the video and I will make every effort to. I mean, housing is one of our parts of the law says that we should consider, and we try to follow the law very carefully. And we try to have, pretty consistent guidelines that apply to every application that comes in. So I want to be on the record. That's what we're doing, which is really trying to be as full, like really adhering to what this money is supposed to be used for. And I mean, and we haven't in housing literally in years. This is my first year having any housing projects to consider. So I guess I'm just wondering, was it that these didn't seem like the kind of housing projects that would count under CPA, or that there's just, even though, CPA does require us to, set aside for housing, et cetera, that they just don't, some folks, there goes the dog, don't want us to. So if you could just explain a little bit about the reason why we wouldn't be giving money to housing, that would be so interesting to me, considering it's one of the areas. It's also one of the areas that has been identified in the plan that we've been, trying to update as like a very important issue in the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there are two things going on with the wind development project, some of which was aired in the meeting and some of which wasn't. I think that I guess it was actually both named, although one was more indirect than the other. But so the comments that were made about the wind development building in terms of, I wouldn't support this and here's why, is around the sense that in
Lighter batch cook air fry.
The Library Commons too, like it wasn't their fault, was how it was expressed, that this was about inflation, and thus like it shouldn't be held against them that they need to come back and ask for more funding. Whereas the wind development project should have known that it was going to be, very difficult to restore that building. They should have seen that it was going, because it named in the application that the reason why they had to come back and ask for more funding was because of the like kind of extreme, status of the building, and it was more expensive to shore it up than they had expected. And so they felt like, well, you should have known that, and thus like almost you're less deserving of the funding, I think. And I'm trying to be as neutral as I can in how I'm describing it. The other piece I think is that because we name you saw the recommendations that we sent, we say like, this is the overall cost of the project and here's the amount that CPA is, they're being asked for. And I think because it's a $55 million project, there was this like, well, what do you need $300,000 for? Right? Almost like, well, that's absurd. How could you need more money? Was sort of how that was discussed. And I think honestly, if I'm going to be real with all of you, I was sort of in that same boat, even starting the conversation with you all last time. I really liked Library Commons too. Like I would have been happy to fully fund that one and not to fund the wind development building, because I was thinking in similar ways, I think, to other city councilors. But the more I think about it, just because it's an expensive project doesn't mean that like the last 300,000 doesn't matter. Especially if it's $300,000 that's directly related to finishings. Like I will bring this up in the city council meeting on the 16th. Like when we redid our kitchen, like we poured over, like what would the faucet be? What would the sink be? What would the doorknobs be? Like those things do matter to people. And so I think if we think that folks moving into those areas shouldn't have nice finishings, that we should reconsider our thinking around that like they don't deserve it, that like it's okay for them to get cheaper things or to get cheaper finishings. I don't know, it sort of was indirectly nodded to. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm trying to think about like what are the arguments to kind of explain why the committee all really supported this project that I can bring back to council on the 16th. All right, I see Jay's hand and then Mary's hand.
Am I unmuted? Thank you. You actually answered my question. I was just going to ask essentially why one and not the other, and what reasons they had given. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mary?
Okay, so I just was going to add to the things that you might be able to bring back for information. And, either way, it's up to them to decide. But one of the things that the people from Wynn said was that they, when they began to do the work on the parking lot, they had some surprises as to what was in the substrate below the parking lot area. And it ended up costing them so much more than their estimates, that it used up, I can't remember the term, but what they had planned to have sort of in reserve for emergencies. Now, I mean, the answer could still come back, well, they should have looked into that first, but that was one of the things that they did say when they came back, when they came to ask us for money, that they had used up their contingency money on things that were surprises in the parking lot. And it's not surprising in Holyoke that would happen, because these lands were used for other manufacturing entities before they were paved over. So when Wynn arrived, it was paved over and they had to start all over again. But so that's just information to offer. I'm
Yeah,
not taking a stand
That's
one way
really
or the other.
helpful. And I can email them and just say, can you just give me the details on that so I can read it with clarity? Any other thoughts about things that because this was the most highly rated project. And it's the one project they don't want to accept our recommendation on. So given that reality, just if anyone wants to express their own views to specific city councilors, you certainly can. I encourage you to do so. You can encourage folks that to support this project if you want it to be supported. It's going to need 9 votes, and I don't think it has it right now. So hopefully we will, but you just don't know. Helene.
Yeah. Not quite sure where to begin, but I guess I just, I think one of the issues that really comes at me is it feels like when we get this feedback from city council, it's almost like a dartboard. Like, we're really clear about what our process is. We're really clear. I would say that I think that if whatever these issues are should be kind of, brought up and discussed during these meetings when you have the expertise, and that this is a little strange to me, because we obviously want to approve things that are going to be passed, and I feel like multiple times it's just been like something very out of left field that could have been raised earlier and should be before we put all this work in. I also feel like, as Mary said, that if we want to folks to invest in the city and rehabilitate these gorgeous buildings that can really benefit the city, and especially families that, or seniors, right, that are desperately in need of affordable housing, that's gonna have some surprises, and that seems like completely something that we should support, that idea that that's something that's going to happen, because of exactly what Mary said, and that if we want this stuff renovated correctly and not to be an issue in the future where we put this money in and it's done on the cheap and then it needs tons of rehab in not a very long time, then that is just a consideration that I just feel like it's completely reasonable. And so, if developers just feel like, oh, that's not, we're trying to put this together and we're getting pushback on things that just seem extremely random, it just seems like not very welcoming and about what, is such a tremendous need. And I mean, housing, I think, is just such a tremendous need. And so, so I want that to always be really highlighted. And so anyway, I could go on and on, but but I just, it just feels like everything we do is so transparent about how we make decisions. We talk about it. We have the rules like that we follow. We have a rubric, and it is disheartening. Like I don't think this process works very well if the feedback we get is just like seems like completely like someone threw a dart and was like, oh, that's the issue I have today. That's how I feel. So
Yes, I appreciate everything you just said. Okay, so it goes to city council on the 16th for discussion. They could vote on all of it that night. They could, you know, table one piece of it. I will say there was almost a sense of like, could we come back to the committee and just ask them to fund the Wayfinders project and not the Wind project? Would they be open to that? I'm a little frustrated by that feeling of like, hey, could we horse trade with you? Could we say no to a project and ask you to fully fund another project more? Because technically they only have the capacity to reject, accept or lower one of our recommendations. So to say like, if we reject this, could we come back to you and ask you to raise another is just another way of doing something they technically don't have the ability to do. Because they don't have the ability to raise it themselves. But the committee would have to decide, like it would be the will of the committee on that one if we want to like set a precedent to allow that. I balk a little bit at that. I'm a little worried about what happens in the future if we set that precedent, but like it would be a discussion in the will of the committee for us to, figure that out. Okay, let's move now to, I'm gonna move 4 out of order because Megan Seiler is here. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for my brain fart. I meant to move you first before that, and I'm so sorry. Forgive me. She's gonna just quickly kind of just do an informal sharing of some of the big takeaways from the Wistariahurst engineering study that we got, now the final report from Ty and Bond on. Just to give us a sense of like what were the big takeaways and like what does this mean for CPA in the future, like what things might come forward. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so the document is not letting me share.
Oh,
I don't know if you have it and you can pull it up and share the screen and I can kind of go through it, but I did send it out and I'm sorry I didn't have time to prepare like a presentation. I sort of found out this morning that I was supposed to. So a lot of the situation that came up from the survey that was done was stuff we kind of already knew. So the basement is the original basement for the house has the most issues. The biggest issue is the surface entrance ramp, that wall. So in 2018, when the building was first looked at, I think by Goss and McLean, no, sorry, it was another firm, Fuss and O'Neill, that's it. Fuss and O'Neill in 2018 did an engineering survey for the electrical work that was being done. And at that time, they were saying the bowing was about 3 inches at the bottom and about 1 inch at the top. When they came in and did their search this time, they found that the bottom is now protruding, is bowing 8 inches. So we're looking at about just under 1 inch a year of that bowing. And we kind of knew that that was going to be the most problematic site because we can see the debris and the leaking from the bricks and all that good stuff. So other areas that were identified were paint storage and the original wine cellar. Those are both showing about 3 inches of bowing as well. And then there is a workshop in the basement and there is one section that's sort of right under where the piazza is and the gallery on the first floor. So right under that basement. We're having issues with some water leakage through the bricks in there and seeing it losing some of its integrity. So in total for the basement, they estimate the cost to be around $233,550. And then the chimneys were all looked at. All of the chimneys, we kind of already knew that they were going to have some issues. The one that's in the most desperate condition is chimney A, and that's actually one that's getting worked on right now. So chimney A is was with the most active leak that we saw. So that's the one we wanted to attack first. And that was also doing damage to historic wallpaper in Stuart's bedroom on the second floor. The other chimneys that they identified as needing the most work are chimneys A, B, C, and D. So the estimate for the ones that are in the most urgent repair, because those are ones that were also at some point causing water damage. We can't tell if it's still active because they didn't do a water meter test on the ceilings. But that estimate came in at $92,000. Repairs for all of the chimneys came in at $156,000. The piazza repair, which is where we have public space, and the porch that's getting redone, it's all the brickwork that's on that side of the house. That came in at about $37,000 for an estimate. And then we also have water damage throughout the house from leaking roofs, leaking chimneys over the years. So they identified in total, and what they saw as the most urgent is the basement and the chimneys A, B, C, and D. That total came in estimated around $660,000 in work. The total amount they estimate comes in just under $1 million at $987,700. So I think the biggest issue is the basement underneath the ramp. Another thing, if you scroll through the pictures, I can kind of explain what you're seeing. So right there's the service ramp off the side. So just below that is where we're getting the most damage. And that's sort of what you're seeing here. So you go down the steps in the kitchen, and that's that. If you keep going, it'll get a full, that's the wall that's giving us the most trouble right there. And there's another image of it from the side. So you can kind of see the bowing in the image. It's not great, but if you want to keep scrolling. So this is sort of what we're seeing in certain areas is like this brick, the paint that was on it is coming off. We're seeing debris and, integrity of the brick kind of crumbling a little bit. That's another wall behind, around the same area. It's just behind the staircase. So that's the storage room that they identified as needing the most work. That's more of the wall in there. So you can kind of see a little bowing. And then that is the workroom there. So that black mass. So there's like a white mass there that used to be like a window, and it was covered by the piazza at one point. And then you see the black over there. That's like sort of where we're getting some of that leaking coming in. And if you want to keep scrolling down. So these are just some chimney images that they took from different perspectives. You can kind of see, what is that like? I can't remember the exact term for it, but you're seeing some of the minerals leaking out of the brick. We've lost a few bricks from the chimneys, and that's chimney A. That's the one's getting worked on. So all of this is actually dismantled right now. And this is the wall with the most significant damage in Stuart's bedroom. And actually, it's interesting because when they took the brick off, the wall was actually attached to the brick. So we now have holes going outside. So once the brick's up, that hole will be covered, which is great because we also have money in the budget to restore the wall. So we'll be doing that shortly. And this chimney B, this is a view from the third floor here. So that's one we've lost a couple bricks from the top off of. That would probably be the next one that should be addressed. So these are C and D. They're in the center of the house. We have had water damage on those ceilings, and you'll see some of that in the coming photos. So yeah, as you can see, there's some water damage here. So this is chimney C. This is third floor storage. And it's hard to know if all of this is like active because we're not seeing a ton of dust like we saw with chimney A. But we are seeing that water damage, so it's possible that it's still leaking. We did get a roof repair done with CDBG grant money last year, so it kind of reaffirmed some of this late roofing. So there were some areas where that had shifted, so that was, letting in a little bit of water, not anything too serious like this. This is chimney E. And thankfully, most of this is on the third floor, and it's not causing any severe damage to anything that's, none of this wallpaper is original. It's all from the 60s and 70s. And if you want to keep going, again, this is just, that's a lot of that is older. It's not currently giving off any dust, so it's not active at the moment. A lot of chimney pictures, just kind of showing you that leakage from the bricks. That's why it's giving that white color. So here's something that we can do. We haven't had a regular maintenance schedule for the for any of the what is that called? I'm totally spacing.
Downspouts,
Downspout, any of
downspout.
the gutters.
Ex-
We have not had a regular maintenance schedule to clean out gutters. So I started that. I put alerts on the DPW calendar that, you know, this needs to be done. But the problem with this is that these are originally going into the sewer, like storm runoff. And I'm not entirely sure that those are even open anymore. So what I think needs to happen is we have to divert anything that's going into this drain rail, which is going into what used to be stormwater runoff. All of that really needs to just be directed away from the house and not have it going into that system, because I don't even think that that's open anymore. So right now it's full of debris. So it's just pounding into the foundation, which is what's causing this damage to happen probably more quickly than it needs to. So that's something that we can work on remedying in the new fiscal year, is kind of getting these drain pipes, either if they need to be cleared, clearing them if we can still use them. Otherwise, we need to get them diverted away from the house with some like extensions for that downspout. This is the piazza area here. As you can see, you know, it's just, it's damaged, it's older, and this is where the public can walk. So I'm kind of concerned about liability. Like, I want the public to be able to use that space. It's actually really, really beautiful when the vines are all covered in. It's like just a really beautiful place to sit and enjoy. I would love to see this done maybe next year in tandem with the service entrance area of the basement, because that's the most urgent. I'm hoping to, so right now we put in a mass historic preservation projects fund grant to match the funding that was given for the retaining wall. So hopefully, we don't know if we're going to get that yet, but that would be another $100,000 towards the retaining wall. And my hope would be that, you know, the next step would be looking at the Mass Cultural Council Capitals Facility Fund grant as an option, and, you know, kind of, you know, doing sort of like a public entrance safety sort of spin on that grant to ask for the piazza and that railing ramp area. Because if that crumbles, I mean, that's a huge entrance that we need all the time for the public. So that's sort of how I'm going to try and tackle it in the coming year. But that's sort of where we're looking at, which, I mean, it sounds like a scary number, but it's a really big house. And the good news is the music room basement is in great shape. The carriage house is in good shape right now. They didn't see any issues with the foundation in the carriage house basement. So, I mean, there's positives. Like, there's some spots that don't need work, but it's a big house. So there's a lot coming down the rail.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I know that we needed to get this survey done so that you could then be able to apply for other sources of funding, and not having this updated engineering report was preventing that.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think it's so hard, because like the things that I really want to be able to do is like restore the Tiffany stained glass window that's sitting in a box. Like there's so many cool historic restoration projects that like we could be doing and funding as a committee. But I know that like also in like the Maslow's hierarchy of need, like not having your basement bowing out 8 inches comes first. I
Yeah.
get why we're like asking city council to fund but I also, and I know we're getting through the backlog. I'm excited about you talking about the like public works grant and being able to like hopefully like, because that's a huge chunk of it, is like the 233 for the basement and the 37 for the piazza, and that leaves like, you know, okay, so 92,000 for the chimneys to get through like the worst of it, and then like maybe we could do other projects that aren't just like the restoring of basic infrastructure.
I know it's such a shame too, because, you know, you walk around the house and there's like clearly aesthetic needs that have to be addressed. And I would, it's much sexier to like advertise a Tiffany window getting restored. And it's so much better, press. It's really, it makes me sad that we can't do these things, but it's so essential that the building gets shored up so that for generations to come, it's in good shape and get on a schedule. That's one of the things that I'm like, we have to have a schedule for maintenance. At least every other year, we need to be looking at the slate roof and saying, okay, we need things the slate roof can last for a really long time if it's taken care of. It's just all of these little things that have been, on the wayside. It's, it adds up really quickly. It becomes scary really quickly. So.
Well, there's a lot of deferred maintenance, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that it's like there is this backlog that needs to be cleared to get the house to basic, where you can then do these other projects.
Yeah, like I had no idea that like they weren't cleaning the gutters annually. Like I had no idea that no one had even looked at those downspouts until we started doing the repainting project and we're taking things off and I'm like, this is clogged. Like we cannot like that was making these issues worse for who knows how many years.
Decades. Yeah.
So
any other questions from a member of the committee or anything else you just want to just to name or say? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And I know it's your evening. Thank you. Appreciate you.
I appreciate all that you do. And we're very grateful for all the support.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. And so one of the reasons why we invited her tonight was because that ties up that major chunk of that project is that we now have the final report for the engineering study, and it does give us a sense of sort of what are the needs and how much they will cost, which I think is a good thing moving forward for the city to understand, and also for the director so they can start chasing other sources of funding. Because so far they've really been sort of, having to use CPA funding alongside of the Mass Historic funding, if I'm remembering it correctly. Or was it no, they couldn't get Mass Historic funding because they didn't have the engineering study. That's why the stained glass windows kept getting funded, is because we tried to move Wistariahurst forward for matching funding through them, and it was rejected on the basis that they didn't have an engineering study that was recent enough. And so that's when they were able to sub out and get more, another round of matching funding for the stained glass windows. But I know the last time that we did get matching funding for the stained glass windows, this Mass Historic said it would be the last time that same project could get matching funding. Okay. I'm gonna move number 5 up. We'll come back to number 2 afterwards. So updates from CPAC staff. So I know that some folks heard me, but other folks kind of came in a little bit late. So Amy Landau got wisdom teeth surgery, and so she's sort of been recovering from complications from that. That's why she's not here tonight. And so if you haven't gotten an email back from her over the next last 2 weeks, it's related to she was away on vacation and then had this scheduled surgery. But she should be back to work by next week. And the other piece that she wanted to talk about, which is why MIFA Victory Theater reps are here today, is the fact that we are hoping to hear from them tonight around a storage plan that they had been talking about with Amy. So I'll turn it over to you to just walk us through your current thinking around the storage plan for the murals that were restored. And then I'll open it up to the committee to ask any questions they have.
Great. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you for joining us.
It's great. It's great to participate in one of your meetings. And so, I mean, the hard work that people put into having all these, wonderful assets that this city has survive. And it's really interesting to me personally, and it's really important. We're bringing this very, I think, happy moment to the murals are back. They're here. They arrived yesterday and today. I mean, this is such, I've been involved in a lot of productions, whether they're live theater productions or, one thing or the other. And it is just so exciting to have had this project, in particular the restoration of the murals, initiated almost 10 years ago, I guess 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, and to have them now, having been taken off the walls when they were in dire threat, and then stored and then put in the hands of, I think, probably the most venerated restorers or whatever, and now they're done, they're finished, they're back, and we put them in storage. So my report on storage is, number one, I want to impart the news, and the preservation was such an important, the committee was such an important part of the success of this story in providing the funds, and we did it. And so they're back, and of course they will now await. They're like a lady in waiting, or I don't know what the right to go into the theater when it opens. But so they arrived, and we're going to show you a few, kind of candid camera shots of them.
Hang on.
Fleur Kuda, who's our administrative assistant, is
Computer's at a weird angle. One second.
okay.
Hang on. Okay, almost there. There we go.
Okay. So, I have to warn you that, okay, you're not going to see a lot of tremendously visually exciting material, because they, of course, are all professionally rolled up and by Evergreen, and in these what they refer to as large, kind of like paper towel sort of disposal format. But there are 7 tubes like this for the murals. To put it in perspective, the murals are 23 feet high by 13 feet wide, and they were done in sections, fortunately, on canvas, so that when we took them down, fortunately, unlike frescoes that might have been painted on plaster, they were on canvas, so that made the possibility of saving them that much easier. But so they are all rolled into these professionally processed and protected sections, and there are 7 of them, and you're seeing them go here they are in their lovely room in storage on Appleton Street. Evergreen created the structures there that you see in yellow to fit into the space, which is air controlled and heat controlled and in every way controlled and protected. And there they will live until they come out. And I'll get back to that, but certainly to go into the theater or in an interim phase where we're looking at the idea of here is our picture, our before photos.
I don't want to go too fast. I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay.
But
Here are
this is
before.
a little more aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
On the screen.
And there's an after of what we call the lunette. The top of each of the 2 murals has a rounded panel like this, which we call a lunette. And that's the one, the panels depict the victory of good over evil, one of my favorite themes. We need to see that happen all the time. And here we have the goddess or the heroine of victory shining her torch in the lunette. And we see a section over on the right from the other side of the panel, which is those are pretty obviously a couple of bad guys. And so these are the restored sections. It gives you some idea of the scale.
That's all. Picture.
That's it that we have for these, but I mean.
And what is the name of the storage facility, Don?
It is officially, it's the U-Haul storage facility on Appleton Street. It's right across the street from the police station
Yeah.
and across from Heritage Park. It's that large. It's a really quite fantastic facility, very well managed, very clean, and we felt that it was the one. It's really good and evergreen. We followed their advice on where they should be. We're very enthusiastic about it, and we're lucky that it's right in downtown Holyoke, not too far. I kind of think they're like, I don't know, refugees that have been returned to their home, or at least close to it.
I know that early on, one of the concerns was around the cost of storage.
Yes,
So will you walk us through
Sure.
what your
Yep.
expected expenses are from this and
Sure.
kind of your level of confidence around being able to maintain it?
yes. So the cost of this particular unit, storage unit, is actually a very modest 175. I'm going to round it out to, let's call it $180 a month. And we have taken a contract with the storage facility, and we also have insurance on the murals, and it's really it's an ongoing rental, year by year, and we can happy to share the contracts with you, etc. And
Yeah, that would be great.
that is part of the arrangement, the wonderful arrangement that we came to, which was that MIFA, of course, shoulders the cost of that storage until we go into the Victory Theater, or should that unlikely scenario play out, would be responsible for what would be the alternative to that until such time as they would become owned by owned or installed somewhere else or exhibited by the city. And our board has voted, of course, on that when we signed that contract with the CPC, and so that is it's a line item in our budget.
Thank you. Yeah, I will say, Dawn, that they're very dramatic, aren't they?
They are, and I have to say, as an aside, we're all just cooking on thinking what we can do to do kind of like, as they say in the rock and roll industry, merch from these, we have many things in the city, but these, and of course, I think that the imagery in the stained glass windows at City Hall is also very, very captivating and exciting. And the more we get this aspect of Holyoke's cultural identity out to the great world, the more it helps, I think, all of what we're trying to do in the city in every kind of case, in every part of finding monies to help us improve historic and important sites in the city. But they're very dramatic, and yeah. So I don't, that's the situation with the storage, and I say this is such a perfect. They arrived today, and so what we're planning, and just so you know the whole picture, is that because the construction for the Victory, which has begun, it began in November, but it's 2 years. That was always been thought to, not thought to be, but the contractors and the architects, it's 2 years. So while these are in storage, we were thinking that it would be really great at some point to have an exhibition of them in some way that would be, bring even more attention to the project, to them, and to the city. And we've been looking at a couple of thoughts about that, and I'm happy to go into those in a very, easy way if that's of interest.
I think it probably is, but Jay, I also saw that your hand was up. Do you want to speak? Do you have a question?
Yeah, that was Don actually just spoke to my question a bit. I was actually curious when the public might be able to view
Yeah.
these beautiful murals and
Yes.
what the time frame on that is and how that might look. Because certainly we want them safe and taken care of, but you know, I think the public benefit is limited until they're displayed, and I just love to know what the thought process was on that, and you did just speak to that a bit already, but I just love a little more info on that
Sure.
if possible. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, part of this, so we had, the first thing we did a year ago was to have the lunette. You see, if you see the mural on the left, this, okay, so this is the counterpart for the right-hand side mural. And we had this done first, and it was great to be at here, Megan talking just now about Wistariahurst, but having been there this morning when this left
Okay, it's okay.
Wistariahurst. Yeah. So we had this on display there for a year. And that kind of led us to this thought about what could we do to have the public and have them seen. That can be done. And I think the question is what the right place. There, of course, are issues of security, security, and you know, we don't want to expose them to, you know, any kind of damage, etc. So a couple of Evergreen has proposed something. Well, so that's number one. We looked at and have talked around about the possibility of a couple of sites for perhaps one whole mural. The fact is, of course, they're huge. They're 23 feet high by 13 feet wide. And so there has to be some place that can actually house something that size. And so we've been playing around and, you know, just talking with a couple of ideas, one of which is Mass Mocha. These are the WPA project of which these came out of in the late 1930s and 1940s was very, it's a very venerated school of art in America. And it might be very interesting to have one of these very stellar examples of WPA funded art be someplace like Mass Mocha. We've had nothing really has emerged into something that I could say is definite yet. We've started some conversations. We were first trying to figure out what would be the right sites. The second one is, okay, brace yourselves, the Holyoke Mall, because it has the height in those atriums. Now, the problem there is the number of people passing through, but that's also its kind of advantage. So many people in terms of display would see them. And when we sat down to start talking about it with Evergreen, and we have not had a conversation other than to think about it with them all. One possibility is to do digital photographs of the murals and put them up. Imagine in the mall in one of those central, atriums, what I call atriums, which could also have an exhibition of the theater, all kinds of things that would be impacted that the murals are part of. My special favorite is to have a suggestion box where people could say what they would like to see at the theater. They'd like to see, Wicked or a revival of Elvis Presley. So that's an idea. There are some other sites in the city that might, and again, these are just ideas we've had. Jeff Hayden at Holyoke Community College mentioned there might be a possibility of a site at the college. There's also the public library, maybe not the huge, the whole mural like that, but something similar to what we did at Wistariahurst. So that's what we're kind of kicking around the ideas of.
Can I continue on that comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
yeah, I would just offer my opinion that I think it's critical in my view for them to be located within the city of Holyoke. I think I'm not sure if that was clear, but or if there was some ambiguity to that. But I think that that's certainly important. I mean, if the citizens are choosing to pay an extra tax on something, and I think it's essential that it's available to them, and that it's available to all of our residents, and not just those who are able to go travel to different places. And that's just my personal opinion, and I just wanted to make a note of that. And I thank you for your good work, and I wish you the best in your project. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what you're exploring with the mall is interesting, and I understand that, the high traffic of that spot means that maybe a high quality digital photograph, even if it was possible to do one at full height,
Yeah.
and at scale, would be quite neat. But I hear, Jay's concerns around like it being available to Holyoke folks.
Mhm.
I do understand the concept of being able to sometimes, works of art are shared, right?
Yeah.
Or are, on temporary loan to other institutions. So like I do hear that as a possibility, especially if it's one that allows for fundraising that leads to the creation of the Victory Theater. I do understand that. And maybe there's a way of making sure to balance it against like who is this available to and how, and if it's going to be somehow installed for a temporary display at a museum that is not within easy walking distance or driving distance of Holyoke, then maybe it's a number of buses that are chartered that are free of cost that allow for folks to have access to it, right? Maybe there are other ways that we can explore it as a concept, because I do hear what you're saying. One of my questions is on the lunette. So the one that was at the Wistariahurst, was that taken off of the backing and then re-rolled and put in storage, or was that kept on the backing and placed in storage somewhere else? Like, where did that lunette go from Wistariahurst?
So the lunette was not taken off and put in a roll the way you saw, because it seemed counterproductive. It also, if in fact exploring the ideas of an exhibition, we could even have that be on exhibition pretty easily, not having to put the other bigger ones on backing. So that is here in that the 7 rolls that you saw in the pictures there, the lunette is here at our office on 56 Suffolk Street, all wrapped up and in its what can I say, protective, this, that, and the other thing. And Evergreen thought that was a great idea too, because obviously our office is weather controlled and heat controlled and all that, but that it would also make it easier to, if we wanted to have an exhibition, for example, at the library, and put the lunette back there, that's an easily done move, rather than having it to be unrolled, put back on a backing. All of that backing is the backing, by the way, part of it is the backing that will affix it to the wall of the Victory. So we don't really there's nothing productive about taking it off of that at the moment. So that's where that is living at 56 Suffolk Street. And the great thing is, I don't know if anybody's, if you went to the exhibition, there were some very nice information boards and also 2 paintings of the interior of the Victory that were done in 1989. We have all of those too. So that is a very easily done, I don't know, kind of like pop-up exhibition for the lunette.
Yes, Mary.
So where do we stand then in regards to the funding of this project?
It's
Been
100%.
expended.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's funded. It's paid for.
Okay, and so this question is for Megan. So then do we close out a project, or do we have some steps to take to say that the project is complete?
Yeah, the last step was affirming the storage plan. So I think at this point, Dawn, if you, have you put this in writing? That they'll be stored at this location for this, at this cost per month, here's the insurance fee. Because if you can document that on a single page with a letterhead,
Yeah.
that would be fantastic. Along with the contract with the storage facility and the insurance contract.
Yes.
Then I think that we would be able to say that the storage plan has been satisfied. It has been named and documented. And then I think that we would be naming this as a completed project.
Great.
And
And
then-
it kind of coordinated the fact that they arrived today in this meeting, so we were kind of waiting for all things, even, that
Mhm.
they would fall into place, and they all did. So yes, that we can provide anything like that. Yes.
Mary, yes.
Yeah, and then the only other thing is, how about the business of attributing CPA funds
Mhm.
to the project? I mean, obviously, you're not gonna stick it on every panel, but I mean, is there what did we originally put in the contract in regards to that?
It's very, well, I think, well, I'll let me, it's very
I was
explicit.
just gonna say that I know that, there can be no, formalized plaque at this point because it's not installed, in the theater. But I know that we talked about, for example, if this is used, the images or the material is used in press releases or online, that you'll always make sure to attribute CPA. So I guess one of my questions is how, to Mary's point, how do you plan to attribute part of this project to CPA? Is it visually? Is it a kind of text disclaimer? What are you thinking?
Well, Amy and Fleur, I mean, there was a language that's been worked out that we've adopted, and it appears, it's already appeared in our press releases, and everything about, and so it's a very standard, what's called a boilerplate.
And
Okay.
we also put the logo,
Yeah.
if there's any space for a visual.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I just want to, what can I say? These things are not easy, and I just think we should all, and previous committee members and chairs, it's just a try. We want to have when we know what the next kind of public exposure, back to David's, that we will have a party, and we will, everybody, I think, should take a bow for it, because I think it's just an example of soldiering through and getting something done that's, I think, very inspiring and exciting.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you so much for coming in tonight. I really appreciate it. If anyone else from the committee wants to speak, now's your time. Okay. All right, Dawn and Fleur, thank you so much for coming in.
Keep
Appreciate
up the good work.
Thank you.
You too.
You too. You
Thank
too.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're gonna move back to agenda item 2. So, and this came from some comments that Nathan had. So Nathan, I wanted to just give you a little bit of time. I'm gonna pull up the website, and then I'd love to hear your thinking about some things that you wanted to see on the website. And Jay and I are gonna be meeting soon to do a little bit of upkeep on it, because of course, once they are approved, we'll have to put in all of our FY24 projects, which means making a new page for that and making new tiles for those projects. But while we're doing that, I think Nathan had some concerns, and maybe others do too, about things they'd like to see happen in the website, and happy to hear it as we're trying to figure out what we can do versus what Joanne can be asked to do, who's the person who helps us to maintain the website when there's something that we can't do. She often does. So Nathan, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, thank you for putting this agenda. Yeah, so I after I joined, I started looking at the website, and I just, in terms of usability, especially for public, trying to access information quickly and simply, it didn't work for me. And I think, I studied websites. I made some websites before, usually using WordPress, and I worked in IT, so I have some basic understanding of it. And I think the main thing is, I mean, usability is important more and more as people really rely on websites. And I think maybe the website could use some usability analysis and improvement from a usability expert, like a web usability ex professional. And in my September email, I made a couple points. I'll just quickly summarize them. I had some, concerns with the 3-column layout. So you see this in the news column on the left side, the main body in the middle, and the right side announcement column. These might work well for a more dense website that's really well organized, but it can be visually very busy and hard to navigate for people if it's not laid out. And I think for a smaller organizational or departmental website such as CPAC, I don't think a 3-column design is necessary. And the what really kind of threw me off was for people who want to know what the current proposed projects are and what the most important current usage, they don't see it on the front page. They have to click the announcement link and then go through some couple of steps. And yeah, it's just a couple of steps to see it. I think the announcement, especially about ongoing projects, it should be like very clear at the front page without needing to click something that's not so clear. It just should be shown, hey, here are the proposed projects, or to look at proposed projects that's pending, please click here. Just be very direct in the first page. Third point, and I think just the way different buttons and links and text and headings are sized, it's not necessarily reflective. I think it looks very busy, and sometimes some of the buttons are in the news. These buttons seem a little bit too large for their importance. And maybe buttons could be grouped together. Yes, so I'm gonna stop. I guess Jay has his hand up.
Okay, Jay?
Yes, I just wanted to comment. I mean, I think our website has great information, but it can be a little bit, maybe a little bit much for some people to get to, because I do feel that we have great information on our website, and I just would support Nathan's idea. I'm not sure what our next step might be. Perhaps as a committee we could empower Nathan to meet with our web designer and Meg. I'm not really sure, but I kind of like the idea of trying to make it more available to folks. I apologize, my kids are yelling in the background. Yeah, in general, I just would say that I feel like our website does have good information on it. I found a lot of the meetings online, and certainly all of the projects, or almost all of the projects. But it can be a little bit awkward trying to get through it for some people, I would think. So I would, like I said, just to wrap it up, I would support Nathan's idea, and not really sure how what the best way to move forward would be, but that's just my general thoughts. Thank you.
I do wonder if people are accessing our website online or on their phones most frequently, because, and also I have a huge monitor. And so like I often have issues that other people don't have. And just like, cause I have an oddly sized monitor, like the way that pictures show up looks different than other people's computers. But the website, the version that's on people's phones is of course a single block of text, right? Where you just see like a very, short version of the banner. And then it just has the like, hey, CPA's brought in X amount of money in the last 5 years. It has the project spotlight, and then it goes like, check out, the Holyoke projects map. And then it goes to the announcements block, and then to the important documents piece. So it definitely looks really different on the phone. And then of course, like you hit the menu button to get to all the other things if you want to see proposed projects or whatever. So I do find that like what's the layout on the phone is entirely different from on the website. And that makes sense, right? Because it's tiny screen versus bigger screens. But I do sort of wonder like which one is best. And yeah, I don't know. One of the clear things for me is the announcements tab. I think in the news works, but announcements, like here, I'll just show this one more time to give you a sense of sort of, again, like things just evolve over time. This is what our website used to look like. There was nothing on the left or the right, and everything was a single page block in the middle of just links all the way down. And that's what our website was until we redesigned it, and paid Joanne to do so. I think that was 3 years ago. So before that, it was hard because trying to find anything meant you had to read through the whole, almost like a blog, read through all of it all the way down and kind of just click on links as you go. And it kind of felt like the information was just going and going and going. So the concept of making the 3 columns on the website version initially was this idea that actually it would sort of put everything up so that folks could know where to navigate. But maybe there's a better way of doing that. I mean, I did reach out to Joanne and she was like, well, if you want me to, renovate, restructure the website again, we could. We would just have to be willing to pay her the money to do so. Because it's sort of above the pay grade of, like I'm willing, and I think Jay's stepped up and said he's willing to sort of start helping to maintain the website. I've learned how to do basic things like add a, interstitial page, right? Like add tiles and a photograph next to a description, right? Like I've learned how to do that. And we've sort of stepped into doing that in order to save the committee money, right? Versus having to pay a retainer fee, like having someone do this work. It was just a way of being more economical for the taxpayer. So it's something that we, those things are sort of beyond our capacity in terms of restructuring it, but we could, the committee, if they wanted it to be restructured, we could, take money out of the admin budget in order to ask Joanne to do it, or someone else. Yes, Nathan.
Yes, I think just the general idea, I realize I didn't need to go into so many details. The general idea is to simplify, group relevant information together and get rid of redundancies, and also design in such a way that information that gets refreshed every year, new projects, it's all like nicely categorized and paginated. So adding new year's project doesn't like clutter the website endlessly. I think it might be, so the thing is, existing, solutions like WordPress and other ones, they kind of automate these types of, they help better automate information organization for websites. So you don't need to hire a custom builder necessarily if you've picked the right type of theme. And secondly, I think it might be beneficial, maybe even very expensive or maybe not, but it might be very beneficial to look into a consultant who can provide a third eye, in terms of organizing and redesigning. You don't need to commit to a design, but if somebody's able to sketch out some rough mock-ups and have some strategy for organizing the data, I think it could be beneficial. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mary.
Actually, Nathan answered my question, but is there a person that can do that? Or are there entities or businesses that do that? And how much do they cost?
That I don't know.
Do you know, Nathan?
I'd have to ask around and figure out who is the city vendor, that sort of thing.
Oh, do you happen?
I'm sorry, Mary, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just was wondering if you had a suggestion, Nathan. Do you know where we would go for that service?
Well, roughly. So, I mean, typically what's kind of unusual is even though this is a city department, it has its own website with its own URL. That itself is unusual. Typically, the city's main website framework, you'd be a part of the main framework that kind of dictates the style, and then the design and organization would be kind of within the framework. But sorry, so I'm rambling. IT might have a regular relationship or contract with some kind of vendor who provide these kind of services. And frankly, I just have no idea what the cost would be at this point. It's all over the map. Typically, I worked in IT briefly. Cost is all over the map. Typically, you get what you pay for, but not necessarily true. You have to really discuss with them and do mock-ups. Sometimes you get people who really act like they're experts and charge a lot of money, but then it turned out they actually haven't had a lot of experience. That happens sometimes in IT. not talking web design, but in general in IT. So you gotta be a little bit more cautious. Just look for somebody with the portfolio and clear communication and demonstrate reputation. And they may not necessarily be so expensive, but also they're probably not gonna be very cheap. I just can't put a dollar amount to it. But maybe start with IT, see if they have listed vendors, and then you might have to just do some research, asking around.
Okay.
I think if we are gonna explore the idea, it's something that we probably can't ask Amy to do until after contracts are created. Be more of like a summer project to consider it. It just may not happen soon. I don't know if that is okay, but okay.
Yeah, that's
All right.
fine. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
and
I guess one thing that I will say that like I would like we sort of inherited this, right? And we've sort of made it better over time. But I would love to, but again, it would cost money and that's why we never did it. I would love, for now it's a Joomla site. I would love to move to a different platform or a different web language that it's easier, because right now you really do need to have some basic knowledge in order to do anything to the website, which makes it harder to make changes to and maintain over time. And, like right now I'm doing some maintenance, Jay is saying he's willing to learn, but like, is the committee always going to have someone who's willing to do that? Like, I don't know, right? Like, so it would be nicer if it was something that could be sort of easier in terms of maintaining it. Just a sort of a simpler structure. I mean, I'm familiar with Google sites. They're made to be very easy, right? We may not find something that's easier than Joomla, but like maybe we will. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move to the next piece, which is a Google Docs discussion. And I guess what I will say about it briefly, and I'm gonna table it and make sure that we come back to it at the next meeting. Amy and I have been talking about long-term. Right now, in order for us to get access to things as a committee, you have to go to the website, you go to the internal login, you log in, all that stuff. Then you have access to things that we put up there. And that's the main way that we're kind of sharing documents internally versus having right now, Amy has the like CPA Holyoke Google Drive where all of our things are being stored, but we don't have access to that like the staffer does. And what I'm trying to figure out is what does it look like for the committee to have access to that? And how do you set that up? So that there's simply a Google Drive that everyone has access to, and then it's organized with folders, so it's very clear. Someone wants to go in and see all the FY24 docs, they can go into the FY24 folder, they can find the grid, they can find the contracts, they can find everything there. Because even for me as chair, when I'm trying to find something, it's sometimes horrendous trying to go through and either find it in the internal links, and if it's not there, it's like trying to figure out what email in which I was originally shared that. Because I can't always easily find it on Google Drive because it's not organized into folders that I have access to, right? I'm just getting individual docs and I have to know what they're called in order to find them. So it's a process, again, like more kind of a summer work project, but it's something that Amy and I have been talking about in terms of what does it look like to manage that system so that it's easier for the committee to have stuff more right at their fingertips organizationally. So I just wanted to sort of give that update that we're talking about that. And it's something that we need to keep working on. I do want to table it though, so that when Amy is here at the next meeting, she can weigh in with how she's organized it so far and what she's thinking about in terms of what needs to be changed in order to organize it differently for next year.
Okay, so since it's on the agenda, do you want a motion to table it?
I do,
I
yeah,
move
and
to
just
table
bring
it.
it back up when Amy's available.
Okay, I move to table the Google Docs discussion until a meeting where Amy is available.
Do I have a second?
Chris, I think you're muted, Chris.
I will second it. Sorry.
That was a good face, Chris.
Sorry.
Okay. And I do think because it's a motion, we do have to take a roll call vote. So, Helene Busby,
Yes.
Nathan Chung,
Yes.
Jay Ferrario,
Yes.
Christopher Gothier,
Yes.
Meg McGrath Smith, yes, Mary Moriarty.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so, we're gonna move to just a quick update on the ballot question. So have folks been following this? Maybe, no, sort
Uh,
of, so.
Sort
what-
of.
Yeah,
Not-
so it
not-
happened twice. So it was brought up, it failed, it was moved to reconsider. It came up again, legal advised us that we actually had to take 2 votes because this is something that's not coming through, like constituent petition, it's coming through the city council. But the city council actually has to effectively, in order to put it on the ballot, ask the public to approve their recommendation that it be lowered. So once the legal department shared that framework with us, it actually requires 2 votes to put it on the ballot. The first is, do you personally want to recommend to the public that they reduce it to 1%? The second vote would be, do you want to put this on the ballot? The problem is that there are not enough votes. People personally do not want to recommend that it be down to 1%. Some counselors talked about like, well, I don't want to personally lower it to 1%, but I think people should vote on if they want to lower it to 1%. And the legal department was like, well, that's not possible. You're asking, by putting it on the ballot, you're asking the public to lower it. So you have to want to ask them to lower it. So are you willing to vote to ask them to lower it? It doesn't have the votes. And so, at least right now, unless something changes with the process, it doesn't look like there's a way for it to move forward. So, and it's come up 2 or 3 times in different council meetings, over the last few meetings. So just wanted to share that update. And then other.
So
Sorry.
can you?
Okay. Yeah.
So some people want it on the ballot and they also don't want it on the ballot. Is that it? Wait a minute. Some people personally feel as though it's not a good idea to change the amount of money, but yet they do want to see people getting the vote. And that would be, so therefore there would be 2 questions on the same ballot?
No, so what the legal department said is, you can't just say like, well, with all neutrality, we just want to see what people think. Because it's coming from council as a recommendation.
I see.
The council is putting it on the ballot because they think, we want to do this, we want your permission to do this. Because that was how the original ballot question was put on. We want to put a 1.5% surcharge on property tax for CPA. Will you approve this? It came from council and the public approved it. So if the council wants to see it reduced, they have to ask the public, we want to reduce it to 1%. Will you approve that? The problem is if you ask, counselors, do you want to ask the public to do this? They're like, no. A number of counselors are like, I don't want to do that. So it doesn't have the 9 votes to move forward.
So is
There
that
are 9 people on council that want to see themselves personally ask the public to reduce it to 1%.
So then where does it end?
I don't see a way for it to move forward.
Okay.
It doesn't have, unless someone decides to change their vote. At least right now, it doesn't have a way forward.
I mean, it makes sense in some ways. It's a representative democracy, and if the councillors representing their ward or their at-large constituents are not, they themselves don't support the lowering of the rate as the representatives. I mean, sure, they shouldn't put it on the ballot or they shouldn't propose to it. And maybe at this point, people can encourage, so citizens can initiate a ballot question with what, is it 200 votes, 200 signatures or 500 signatures?
The issue, it's very odd. So the way the legal department responded to that though was like, no, it actually has to go on. It has to go on the way the original ballot question went on. So because it wasn't initiated by petition, CPA was originated by council. They asked the public, we want to do this. Do you approve this? And so they have to do it the same way if they want to reduce it or to change it in any way.
Some motivated citizens can organize and start an independent action, that looks like the same thing, but whatever.
Either way, it's a complicated process, but it seems,
Right.
at least right now, that there isn't a way forward. If that changes, I will let you know. Okay,
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
welcome. Okay, so we're just in other, which is just naming the next meeting unless anyone else has anything else they want to bring up. Nathan, do you want to bring up what you were thinking about? Because you were thinking about stepping down from the committee and hoping that someone else from planning board would join.
Yes, I thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, basically, I want to step down. The time commitment and just other priorities in my life is just too much. So, I already wrote to Amy and Megan about it, and so basically, I also wrote to my planning board chair Mimi Panic about this, so they're all aware. I guess at this point, so makes sense to try to have somebody else be appointed from the planning board by the decision of the planning board.
And you're just waiting for the planning board to let you know, like if they're gonna appoint someone else or. I mean, so I'm just saying, because if it happens to be your last meeting, I want to say thank you. Right, for all of the work that you have provided the committee and your time and your commitment. I love planning board representatives. So you're a whole different breed. You come in with like such a detailed mindset, you like pour over the documents, you find the errors. Like I've always appreciated members in the planning board, and the planning board, 'cause I was at part of your Tuesday meeting. It is no joke. It has to be one of the toughest committees in the city by far because you have so much documents to review and meetings are very long and often very hard. So like I understand why being on the second committee is really hard for planning board members. So if someone else does step in for you at like the next meeting, I just don't want the meeting to go by without us saying thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think there is a chance that this might be my last meeting. So yeah, they're working, trying to figure out the details. So yeah, thank you.
I see Jay's hand up.
Sure. I would just ask, I would thank Nathan for his great service. I've enjoyed, serving with you. Not that it's necessarily our last meeting, but I would encourage you to also consider joining our meetings in the future, just as a citizen, to continue offering your wonderful perspectives on things. Cause I think that you, brought an angle on things that I wasn't thinking of in a number of instances. So I definitely, would love to see you in the future, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So our next meeting is going to be May 8th at 6 o'clock on Zoom. And that's all I have, unless anyone else has anything else they want to bring up. All right, awesome. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes, no?
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. And a second.
Second.
We're done. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.